Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so that you know when live we go.
Hello and welcome to today's DNS session. We are going to have a discussion on today's newspaper, The Hindu, Delhi edition dated 1st February 2022. We shall pick up articles important for civil service examination and discuss them as per the demand of the exam. There is an article on page number 9, A Hazy Picture on Employment in India. In this article, the author very emphatically pitches that there are two important indicators of a structural transformation of any economy. One is obviously the growth rate, and the other is the changes in the structural composition of the output and the workforce. As far as the growth rate is concerned, India has performed very impressively. India has experienced fairly consistent changes in this first indicator, especially after the 1991 reform. The growth rate of Indian economy as measured by GVA at constant prices increased from 4.3% approximately, the average of 20 years, the 20 years average before 1991 reform, to the 20 years average of around 6.3% after 1991 reform. There were a few consecutive years in which the India registered the growth rate of around 8% consistently. So India has done quite well as far as growth rate in the economy is concerned. But as far as the composition of the output and workforce is concerned, the performance of Indian economy has not been very impressive. The author points out in the article that there are some problem in understanding, analyzing the trend in the output and employment composition in the economy. One can get help from two data of Government of India. One is the decennial population census, and the other is the survey on employment and unemployment that used to be conducted every 5 years. But the last data that we have of this survey of NSSO is of 2011-12. Because by the time it was time for the next survey, this survey of NSSO was replaced by periodic labor force survey. And we have data of this survey of 3 years. According to the periodic labor force survey, there has been an increase in the worker to population ratio from 34.7% in 2017-18 to around 38.2% in 2019-20. The data that you see on this slide is worth remembering for the mains exam. Worker to population ratio has increased. The periodic labor force survey also highlights that the participation of women in the workforce has not been shrinking as it was lately thought. Female worker to population ratio has increased from 17.5% to 24% in the duration of 2017-18 to 2019-20. And according to the periodic labor force survey, women constitute around 29% of workforce in our country. This data is of 2019-20, but this is the latest that we have. And we came here taking a jump from 24% in 2017-18. The rate of unemployment also reduced from around 6% to around 4.8% from 17-18 to 19-20. But since the population has increased, so the number of unemployed youth in our country has increased substantially in the same duration. Now let's come to the most important data regarding employment distribution in Indian economy according to periodic labor force survey, which is the highlight of this article. The sectoral composition of workforce is like this. It's around 45.6% in agriculture, 30.8% in services, and 23.7% in industry. And what is even more important, according to this survey, there hasn't been any increase in the percentage of workers employed in industry. In the duration of 2017-18 to 19-20, the period for which we have the data for the survey, new jobs were created, around 56 million new jobs. But around 60% of that went in the agriculture sector, and only 14.5% of it came in industry. Within industry, if we talk about the distribution, only 1.8 million jobs were created in manufacturing. Bulk of the job were going in other sectors like construction. So industrial job, within industrial job, manufacturing job is very meager. Maximum employment is generated in agriculture. And this has been the scheme of things since very long time. After liberalization, the percentage of jobs in industry hasn't increased. This has remained stagnant, strikingly, characteristically stagnant in Indian economy. Well, the contribution of manufacturing to GDP has more or less hovering around 16%, and this has been stagnant since the reform. Industry hasn't been the major sector in Indian economy except for the second and the third 5-year plan. The reason why I'm stressing on this, we'll talk about the importance of manufacturing job or industrial sector job. It's important in any economy, and this, as the author has been highlighting, is a characteristic. It's an indicator of transformation of any economy. If we talk about Asian economies, Malaysia tripled its share of manufacturing since 1970s to early 2000s to 24%. Countries like Thailand, they increased their share of industry from 13% to 33% in the span of 50 years, from 1960s to 2000s. Even Vietnam has rose its industrial sector from 9% to 25% from 1991 to 2018 around. This transformation that has happened in the other Asian economies hasn't happened in India. This is just one indicator of distribution of workforce in the economy, but it tells lots of stories. It's important that more job comes from industrial sector and within industry from manufacturing sector. A, because it is labor intensive. So more number of youth every year joining the workforce can be absorbed more because it has high elasticity of employment. The wages in manufacturing, of course, is greater than agriculture sector. So per capita income of the economy will rise when the labor force migrates from agriculture towards manufacturing. Manufacturing sector, the industrial sectors, they are formal job. And the chief characteristic of formal job is social security. Manufacturing sector and in general industrial sector, these formal jobs, they create more learning opportunities. And the return on experience for working in this industry, these sectors, is more. If you work in a manufacturing sector, if you work in the factory floor for 10 years, even if you start from the entry-level job, you can become technician, senior technician, then you can even come at par with engineers. So more you work in the sector, the return of the experience is more. The career graph, the growth is more. The skill development is more. But in lesser paid, in lesser return sector like agriculture sector, if there is no technological implementation, people get stuck. Manufacturing and industries also provides economies of scale which improves the overall efficiency of the economy. Manufacturing sector specifically is one area where absorption of technology is very high. The growth of US, Britain, Europe, it happened with the base of industrial revolution, and the technologies that were being developed in industrial revolution were being absorbed by industries and manufacturing units. As we have discussed before in the previous points, it's more labor intensive. The elasticity of employment is more. Manufacturing sector, they are at ease on establishing themselves in the rural areas, in the interior regions. The thermal power plants, the steel plants, the copper mines, the copper plants, you would find them to be in the interiors. It helps in the balanced regional growth. It helps in the inclusive growth. It has a long supply chain. It integrates MSME sector into itself. That is why after 2008 economic meltdown, the financial meltdown, the US and Europe government, they were having strategy to revive the economy through industrial sector because it is inclusive. Because of long supply chain of manufacturing sector, at back end it has agricultural sector, and in the front end it has the service sector attached to it. Manufacturing sector becomes the bulwark that pulls the agricultural sector of the economy. So it's important that the workforce be distributed such, and the distribution in the GDP is such that the industrial sector and manufacturing sector has a strong base, both in terms of contribution to GDP and in terms of employment of workforce. But as we have seen from the periodic labor force survey, that the majority of new entrants in the labor force between 2017-18 to 2019-20 got absorbed in the agriculture sector, and this has serious implication. The young labor force, which is getting increasingly educated, sorting more remunerative work outside agriculture, but only few of them are succeeding in the pursuit. This is because the industry and the service sectors have adopted capital intensive and in many cases labor displacing technologies. And the situation is getting aggravated by quick adoption of technologies like artificial intelligence, 3D printing, big data, Internet of Things. And this raises a big question as to what should be our strategy for redistribution of workforce in the economy that new jobs are created, and those are good jobs in terms of wages, in terms of condition of work, in terms of social security, in terms of skill development during the job. So it's a big question as to what should be our strategy in the light of adoption of new technologies, in the light of robots displacing people from their job. In fact, it's very interesting if you know the root word robot, it means work. And when it was used for the first time, the purpose of it was made absolutely clear that these are being made to work and the ultimate aim would be to replace human beings. So this shouldn't be not coming as a surprise that machines are taking away the jobs. Job loss due to technology is a reality. You know, the demand for skills linked to home appliance repair is decreasing. You know why? A, because technology is making these devices cheaper, and B, because of robots and other technologies getting involved in development of electronic equipments, the reliability of these equipments are increasing. The 3D printing technologies based on which UPSC asked a question in 2018 prelims examination, Adidas established two speed factories, one in Germany, another in Atlanta in US. And these speed factories involving robots and artificial intelligence enabled the company to eliminate more than 1,000 jobs, and it's winded off its operation units in Vietnam. The Dutch multinational company Philips started using more technology intensive manufacturing base. So the cheap labor that was there in China was not required anymore, and the company could go back home to its native country, Netherlands. You must have heard of driverless vehicles. Even the service sector will not be spared by technology, and the service providers, right from the drivers to the more advanced and skilled service providers like ophthalmologists, advanced researchers, they all will lose their job. You must have heard of Sberbank. It's the largest bank of Russia, and it is relying on artificial intelligence to make around 35% of its loan decision. And this is anticipated that 70% of the loan by Sberbank will be given through machines, through artificial intelligence. In the Sberbank's legal department, robot lawyers are already present. It is expected that the back office employees in the bank will decrease from about 60,000 that were present a decade back to around 1,000. Similarly, many other financial companies like Ant Financial, it's a financial technological company of China, it is using big data to assess loan agreements. It's a global phenomena. Technology is not allowing the workforce in manufacturing and services to increase. And hence, despite all efforts and the employment incentive schemes and other initiatives of government, the overall contribution of these sectors in the employment of the workforce is not increasing. But with right strategy, proper industrial policy, and intensive investment in human capital, some countries have been able to turn around things. Even in some developing countries, the industrial employment is overall going up. For example, in Vietnam, it rose from 9% in 1991 to around 25% in 2017-18. The robot density is highest in countries like Germany, Korea, Singapore. Yet in all these countries, despite the high prevalence of robots, employment rate remains very high. Even the industrial employment is also very high. But the dichotomy between the rising share of industry and services in national income without a sizable increase in employment share is a well-established fact post-liberalization in India. So we really have to think about it as to how we can change things around, as some of the countries have been very calculatively and cautiously doing. For that, we have to hit on the changing skills which is being required by diffusion of technology. The premium on skill is rising, and robots cannot replace some of the human skills like advanced cognitive skills. The socio-behavioral skills like teamwork, collaboration, commitment, dedication, empathy, these cannot come through machines. But building these skills requires strong human capital foundation and a lifelong learning process. But individuals with these technologies are better placed to adopt new technology and adapt to the changing nature of work. In the previous DNS, I gave you this example that return to primary schooling increased in India during Green Revolution because farmers who were educated, even to the primary level, they adopted the new technologies faster. and they were the better beneficiary of green revolution technology and the initiative taken by government of India. In the Shenzhen region of China, which used to be labor intensive, low cost manufacturing, this region has got transformed into high skill technology intensive production area. This has been made possible because of high human capital formation. And this is possible even in developing and less developed nations. For example, in Bolivia, the share of employment in high skill occupation increased by 8% from early 2000s to around 2017-18. And in Ethiopia, it rose by 13%. So it is actually doable. It depends upon whether the changing nature of work that is adapted well by the workforce of the economy. Because increasingly, even in low and middle income countries, people are getting employed in jobs that did not even exist 2 to 3 decades back. For example, in India, there are more than 4 million app developers. According to the World Development Report of the World Bank, Uganda has over 4 lakh internationally certified organic farmers. China has more than 1 lakh data labelers. The gig economy that no one could have thought of a decade back is a reality in low and middle income countries. Technology has also facilitated the creation of jobs workable online. In Ghana, there's a company called as Farmer Line. It's an online platform that communicates with a network of more than 2 lakh farmers in their native languages via mobile phone. You must have heard of JD.com. This is China's second largest e-commerce company after Alibaba, and it has more than 1,70,000 online merchants on its platform, and many of them are in rural areas. So although jobs are getting lost, but new jobs are also getting created. Whenever there will be automation, there will be job loss. But the automation has to be countered by innovation, and innovation will create job. It is in the hands of human beings, facilitated by the government support and the research work, to increase the new job more than the lost jobs. This lost job should be lesser in amount than the jobs that are getting newly created. If that is the case, then the workforce will not have to be employed in low wage, low rewarding jobs, rather in high end, high skilled job, well paid job with social security in industrial and service sector. Similarly, apart from improving the industrial and the service sector, we need to also improve the agriculture sector, making it more technologically intensive and also integrating it with manufacturing and the service sector. One of the things is training the farmers. This has been the best technique to improve the productivity of farmers. At times, this has been combined with increasing access to finance or the inputs required for agriculture as an impetus for improving agricultural productivity. Providing cooperatives with resources improves linkages between agribusinesses along the value chain. JD Finance, this is the financial arm of JD.com, is a leading Chinese e-commerce platform, and this has been providing farmers with microcredits. And this has improved the productivity of farmers in the rural regions of China. The Integrated Growth Poles project in Madagascar has provided farmers with training on improved cocoa processing and business management skills, and this has resulted in an average increase of 47% in the return of the beneficiaries. Similarly, in Afghanistan, there's something called as farmer field schools, which is part of the National Horticulture and Livestock projects, and these schools have considerably improved the income of the participating farmers. In Ghana, the farmer line, as we have talked about, has improved the efficiency and the technical know-how of farmers through communication in their native languages via mobile phone. Similarly, there are many platforms just to engage the farmers, connect them, not only for technical know-how, but also providing them with on-farm job opportunities and off-farm job opportunities, engaging them in agri-food processing and packaging activities. The Vietnamese government has worked out very well the linkage between agriculture and industries. The industry organizations work in a coordinated manner to brand the agricultural products like tea, coffee, cashews. When farmers' crops finally go to market, many of those in emerging economies do not know whether they are getting the best price or not. And there are many platforms for that. You have eNAM in India. Similarly, there's a platform called as True Trade in Uganda. True Trade is an example of a digital technology, and this is bridging the information gap. True Trade connects small farmers to buyers while raising quality and transparency and creating an atmosphere of trust. You see, technology doesn't take away job. Technology is value neutral. Even one of the most feared technology, the assembly line of Robert Ford, that created more jobs and low skilled jobs for the masses. And technologies like quartz watches, it took away high skilled jobs in the watchmaking industry. Technology can take away job, technology can bring in jobs. It is the job of the government to employ technology in such a manner that it is creating more jobs than what it is taking away. The new technologies coming in, like artificial intelligence, 3D printing, big data, they have to be employed in a strategic manner so that the structural composition of output and workforce of Indian economy is such that more jobs are coming from industrial and service sector. There is an article on page number 10. Demand for MGNREGA work softens. Economic Survey has done analysis on demand for MGNREGA, and it has been pointed out, as you can see on your screen, that demand during the second wave was less than the demand during the first wave. Nevertheless, the demand is more than the pre-pandemic era. And during the first lockdown, Government of India infused too much money into this scheme, and hence the bottleneck from the supply side was not there. The demand for MGNREGA is used as an indicator for rural workforce demand. But Economic Survey also has cautioned that this should not be used as an absolute indicator because demand is increasing more in the states where the rural laborers migrate and not in the source states. So this still could be an indicator of distress rather than reducing rural distress on account of increasing rural employment. Since the Economic Survey has done a detailed analysis on the demand of MGNREGA, so it becomes important for you to prepare this topic thoroughly for the next mains exam.
National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme is a demand-driven social security measure that provides minimum of 100 days of unskilled work per household in a financial year. These information are important for the prelims examination. Who is eligible for the scheme? Anyone who is above 18 years of age and reside in rural areas. This scheme is applicable throughout the country except for those districts which has 100% urban population. And how urban and rural population are decided in India, you have to tell me that in the comment section. This scheme has been hailed by many, including World Bank, as the largest anti-poverty program. And the importance of this scheme is very high due to the fact that it is considered as backbone of rural economy whenever there is economic distress. According to the 2011 socio-economic caste census, around 40% of rural households are landless and depend on manual labor. This is the data that you have to keep up your sleeve to be used whenever there is a question on rural distress, rural employment generation in the mains examination. As we have discussed already, there were 7.6 crore families having active job cards under the scheme and 5.5 crore families were seeking work under the scheme. And this is a huge number. This scheme is catering to the employment generation of large number of people. On an average, the daily wage has gone up substantially from the time this scheme was introduced. Present average daily wage is rupees 209. And you must also remember a fact from NSSO report that areas with low consumption expenditure have higher MGNREGA's demand as compared to areas with higher consumption expenditure. Lower consumption expenditure signifies economic financial distress, less demand. And when there is less demand, more financial stress, then MGNREGA is an important source of income. And it also has been observed that women, SCs and STs as beneficiaries of MGNREGA, their percentage has increased over the period of time. Presently, women are around 50% in the workforce under MGNREGA. So despite all its lacuna, it is indeed a very important source of employment generation, especially in the time of economic distress. There are certain very important characteristics of this scheme, which you have to remember for the mains exam. There is no concept of right to work under fundamental right in India. Right to work is not recognized as fundamental right, although it's a very important part of directive principle of the state policy, but it is not justifiable right. However, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme is right-based. You can go and ask for work, and if work is not given to you, then unemployment allowance will be given to you. So it is a right-based approach that has been adopted through MGNREGA. It is also demand-driven. Center gives resources to the state government depending upon how much demand is there for the work in the state. There is also no problem of targeting unlike other schemes because this scheme is self-targeting. You seek for work. If you need work, you go and ask for work. That is self-targeting, and hence this overcomes the problem of targeting. As we have talked about, there is unemployment allowance. If you go to seek work and work has not been provided to you within 15 days, then you are entitled for unemployment allowance. Unemployment allowance is not common in India, unlike Nordic nations. However, under this scheme, for the first time, this concept was introduced and it was institutionalized. If you don't get work, you'll get unemployment allowance. However, that will be lower than the wage that ordinarily a person will be getting under MGNREGA. The scheme adopts bottom-up approach and it strengthens grassroots democratic institution of our country, which is Gram Sabha. Gram Sabha actually is entitled to decide on the nature of work to be adopted in the village. And it is also entitled to implement 50% of the work in terms of cost. And the rest 50% is taken up by the district administration or the state government. Also, tools of good governance, strengthening transparency and accountability has been embedded in the scheme. For example, there is mandatory provision of social audit. There is also a provision of ombudsman system because CAG does not audit MGNREGA, and Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act also asks the state government to proactively disclose all the information on the web portal. And that's how the information we have got that 1.9 lakh people have got employment so far under NREGA. As we saw in the beginning, performance of the schemes taken for the vulnerable sections by the center and the state has been mentioned in the syllabus. So if you're doing any important scheme, you have to do the performance analysis of this scheme because that's the most likely thing to be asked in the mains exam. Let's do the same for National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. How the scheme is doing? The scheme is doing fairly well despite its lacuna that we will also discuss. But first thing is there has been increase in rural wages. As we have seen, the present wage under the scheme with some disparity among the state is 209 rupees and it has gone up substantially from the time it was institutioned. Although to a limited extent, the scheme has helped in achieving the concept of decent work by providing facilities like shade and also Krishe facilities in certain NREGA sites, for example in Meghalaya, Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. As we have seen a moment back that 5.5 crore households were given employment last year. On an average, 5 crore households have been given employment from 2008. Obviously, this will help in reducing the distressed migration. We have also discussed that the scheme is self-targeting. NREGA is also seen as a risk mitigation mechanism. As per the annual report of Ministry of Rural Development on NREGA, it has been shown that when rainfall is scanty, in those years, there is higher overall participation in NREGA. Although there has been claims and allegations that MGNREGA has diverted the manpower from agriculture, hurting agriculture. But Ministry of Rural Development in its annual report has put out that MGNREGA has actually helped agriculture. It has helped in various ways, for example, construction of agricultural assets like farm ponds, irrigation assets, and this has helped in the usage of barren lands for cultivation. This has also helped the small and marginal farmers in moving towards dual and multi-cropping, and this has also helped in making the water available in general for humans and livestock. NREGA has also helped in empowerment of weaker section and hence bringing social justice in society. This is a very, very important data that you have to remember that as per NSSO report, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes have accounted for 51% of manpower under NREGA. Women around 47% and this has increased to around 50% right now. But the mandated percentage of women participation was 33%. And the women participation has surpassed much higher than this. You also have to know, as per the directive given by Ministry of Rural Development to the states, beneficiaries under Forest Right Acts are entitled for 150 days of employment as against 100 days of employment in general category. And certain states like Rajasthan has given employment of 200 days to communities like Sahariyas. So this is a very important scheme for socio-economic justice and empowerment of weaker sections. The scheme has also helped in financial inclusion because the payment under the scheme is done directly into the bank accounts of the beneficiaries through direct benefit transfer. You can also highlight that certain human development indicators are supposed to be increased, although we do not have very strong concrete data on this. But since the income generation has increased, based on that, you can say that food security and nutritional security must have improved to a certain extent. And when the income of adult in the households increases, that inversely affects child labor and positively impacts children's schooling. Because we saw in the beginning in the definition that this provides only unskilled work, and that is one of the major criticisms. We will see certain ways how to improve the design of MGNREGA. First and foremost is to expand the definition of work. There are certain states who have taken proactive measures in this regard. For example, state of Tamil Nadu, they have been giving employment in semi-skilled areas under MGNREGA as well. So definition of work must be improved to include semi-skills work as well. For example, desilting of canals and water bodies. This is taken up in the state of Tamil Nadu. This should be taken as a template, and improvement in the act should be done by the Central Ministry of Rural Development. What can also be done is to converge MGNREGA with the skilling program of Government of India like Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushal Yojana. And involvement of SHGs can also be done either in skilling program or registration of workers, etc., as was seen in Kudumba Shri in Kerala. When SHGs were involved, participation under MGNREGA improved drastically. MGNREGA is already using infrastructure of direct benefit transfer. So beneficiaries already have bank accounts and their mobile numbers are also registered. So the infrastructure of JAM Trinity can be further utilized to increase the insurance coverage through the MGNREGA program, and microcredit and micro insurance can also be given to the beneficiaries under MGNREGA. This is a very, very important suggestions for the improvement of the scheme. Gram Sabha, as we saw in the beginning, although has been made the central point in the implementation of the scheme, but the Gram Sabha is most of the time marginalized, sidelined by the district administration or the state government. But in this regard, Meghalaya as a state has become a role model in giving immense amount of power to the Gram Sabha in implementation of the scheme. This can also be considered by the Ministry of Rural Development to improve the scheme. As we saw previously in the feature of the scheme that social audit is mandatory for the scheme. But most of the state has not institutionalized it, and social audit does not happen regularly. But Andhra Pradesh and Telangana government have made special provision for the social audit beyond what has been mentioned in the legislation. And hence, this becomes another important recommendation for the improvement of the scheme. We saw previously that there is an ombudsman system within the scheme, but it is recommended for better financial integrity and propriety. CAG must be allowed to do the audit of MGNREGA. Presently, there is no provision of grievance redressal. It is mentioned in the Act that you go for the work, you'll be given the work. If the work is not given within 15 days, you'll be given unemployment allowance. There is nowhere you can go for your grievance redressal except for the courts, and that is going to take time. So it is suggested that a grievance redressal mechanism should be made within the provision of the scheme. Presently, work of 100 days is mandated under the scheme, and it is suggested that because of the rural distress, this can be increased further, maybe to 150 or 200 days, depending upon the resource with the state government. Writing a small case study in the mains examination can be very marks fetching, especially in 15 marker. I'm giving you a case study which you have to trim down within 50 words to make it usable for the 15 markers in the mains exam. See, Tamil Nadu has institutionalized MGNREGA with Public Works program, and the dual purpose of asset creation and livelihood security is ensured in this way. Ministry of Rural Development of the state is collaborating with Department of Agriculture, Fisheries, Horticulture, etc. for this purpose. This covers most of the aspect of MGNREGA. You can use this notes as a template for the answer writing, and you keep adding it throughout the year up till you write the mains examination. Anything that you consider relevant to this topic.
On page number 10, you have another article, Ethanol helps sugar mills clear arrears to farmers. The importance of ethanol in various areas of economy was discussed in the DNS of 3rd June 2021. Just in case you need a reference for this topic. There are other topics in today's newspapers related with the economy, related with the anticipation of budget, which anyways will be discussed in great detail by the Baswasar himself when he will discuss the budget and economic survey with you.